Transgender, that's what it's called. That's me. Basically, when babies are born, they're assigned a gender based on what the doctors think they look like. For trans people, that gender doesn't match who we are. And for many who want to or unable to, we transition. That's coming out, hair and clothes, maybe have surgeries, take hormones. That's why I look really different. Take testosterone.
You can save your fancy language. I don't understand. And I don't care.
Where are you going? Dad. Dad, we need to talk about this.
All right, so thank you everyone for being here. My name is Escaja. I use he, they pronouns, and I'm working with GLAAD as a consultant for the folks in transgender representation and Spanish language and Latinx media. And I'm also a young filmmaker. And we're joined here today by some of the team of Rūrangi, which is a beautiful series shot in New Zealand that is currently streaming on Hulu in the United States. I'm here with Cole Meyers, the writer, and Elz Carrad, the lead actor who plays the character Caz. So Elz, will you tell us a little bit about what Rrangi is about?
So Rūrangi follows Caz Davis, who is a young trans activist man who returns home after 10 years to reconnect with his father and his childhood friends.
Cole, would you tell us a little bit more about Rrangi?
Gosh, that's a big question, isn't it?
I know.
I'll give you kind of like the history of the show, if that's sort of what you wanted to know about to begin with. Before I came on board with Rūrangi, I had, because I do work as consultation on trans narratives as well. And so I'd had a lot of bad experiences where I'd been brought on board as a consultant, or, as I like to call it, a consultant at, really late in the game, or that there wasn't really any scope for anything to actually change based on what I said. And so I had I sat myself down, I guess, and had a bit of a pep talk about like, I'm not going to put myself through this anymore. I'm going to be really clear about what needs to happen if I'm going to be involved with any projects. And so when I got asked by Craig, the producer, to be the writer on this, I was like, sounds really interesting, but I've got a few conditions. And I felt quite cheeky asking, but I think, since then, it's been very clear that that was really like necessary, both for my growth, I guess, and for the project itself to have put those conditions in. And they were all trans characters must be played by trans actors. I said I wanted a panel of trans people as a consultation panel, that I got to choose them and we got to talk amongst ourselves without any cis people there. Compulsory gender identity training for all cast and crew, because I feel like it's not enough, obviously, to cast authentically, but actually, if you're not going to create an environment where trans actors are actually safe on set or respected on set, then you're not being responsible. And the other one was about paid creative internships for trans and gender diverse people, because again, I feel like we have a responsibility, if we're not seeing the talent available there for us, to use in a project like this, then what are we doing to change that? Where's the next generation going to get those opportunities? And this was a perfect project, for that kind of learning and growth of young people and interested in the film industry.
I'm curious, that's really impressive. It's amazing. And we don't see that very often. I'm curious why it was important for you to advocate for those things.
I guess there have been things that I've always thought were important and always thought were needed in other projects that I was seeing and things like that, or they were reasons that I was seeing why things weren't succeeding in the way that maybe the people hoped that they would. One of the questions that I always ask when I'm doing consultation work is, why do you want to make this? And the answer, is pretty much always like, because we want things to be better for trans people, which is great and all that, but it's like, it really depends on the way in which you're going to go about that. Are you actually going to be undermining that purpose by the way in which you do that? And the other thing that I think is interesting is that the change that I want to see in the industry and the change that I want to see in trans people's lives, I feel like needs to come from within the community, needs to come from us. It can't come from this external cis savior, like, oh, I want to change everything and make everything better for trans people, therefore I'm gonna impose this thing on the community. It needs to come from the empowerment and the uplifting of trans voices and trans people's lives and experiences, so that we can be the change that we want to see, not have it happen to us. So it was important that this wasn't just a project where the story itself was a trans positive story, but that the actual story of the story also was uplifting and empowering and provided opportunities and growth.
Absolutely. So given that, what would you like audiences to take away from Rūrangi in particular? What was your intention in making this that like people would walk away from that maybe they might not walk away from other representations that are out there?
When I first came on board, I had again seen a whole lot of really crappy trans media, and I feel like the documentary Disclosure does an incredible job of kind of bringing all that together, and the impact of seeing all that kind of media and representation over such a long period of time. But I had this big list that I was like, this is stuff I don't want to see anymore in this, and a big list of this is all the things that I'm not seeing that I think are really important for the community to be seeing. And I think some of the most important stuff about that was about not making it about trans bodies. So I was just like, I don't want to see another fucking transition story. Like, I'm so bored of transition stories, and they just put so much emphasis on this physical aspect, and that's not it. Like, I feel like it misses so much of the trans experience and trans people's lives. The other thing that was really, really up there was I don't want to see any trans people die. So when you're thinking that, maybe 50% of the trans people that you see in media end up dead or things like that, you're like, what kind of message is that sending? And we know what kind of message that's sending, because we know what the mental health statistics are saying for trans people. But on the flip side, the things that I wanted to see, I was like, I want to see, a gay trans man. I want to see that love and affection and, genuine intimacy that's not, fetishized, or on the flip side, completely desexualized in the way trans men, often are. I wanted to see community, and the power of community and the beauty in that, I think. It needed to be the kind of story where you came away feeling good about yourself and about the possibilities for your life. I know the first person in the media that I ever saw that was like me was in Boys Don't Cry, and I just think that legacy that that had on my kind of journey, I think, as far as, you know, coming out as trans was enormous, you know, that, like, and so I just, yeah, I think back and I go, wow, what if the first person like me that I'd seen on screen was Caz, you know, how I would have felt about the possibilities for my life and the trajectory of my life. And on one hand, it makes me sad for myself that I didn't see that. But on the other hand, I feel so grateful that I've had the opportunity to create something like that for the next generation.
Cole, you certainly succeeded, because I watched the show with my boyfriend, who's also trans, and we were just so in awe and comforted by seeing a version of ourselves in the future, that is living a trans person living a normal life past, as you were mentioning, past this like moment of coming out and transitioning. And in reality, most of my life as a trans person is far away from that moment. Yet that's the part that we see so often represented. And we really appreciated that. And also seeing a trans person be attractive and be desired was also very healing to watch, because there's so little, we witnessed that so little, and it made us feel really valued. So I wanted to share that as well, that I think you really succeeded in your intention. So thank you so much.
Do you understand all it? I'm not really on my game.
No. I think I get it. Like, gender, it's complicated.
Oh, yeah.
You were never exactly girly.
Yeah, nah.
I mean, your mum tried. Oh. Shit. Sorry about your mum.
Yeah.
That's what I liked about you. Or one of the things. You weren't like the other girls.
It's because I wasn't one.
Yeah. I guess not.
Elton, I'm wondering how you got involved. How did you find out about this opportunity? Yeah, how does that relate to your acting experience?
Cool. Yeah. So I had been doing just night classes for probably about a year, and then yeah, I did a few auditions, a few ads, didn't have much luck, and then yeah, my agent just sent through the brief, and yeah, it was pretty incredible. Like reading this about this character who I could connect with, you know, instantly. And yeah, that's just how it started. It was went into the audition, and yeah, I got the role. It was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think you mean blew us all away.
I was gonna say you're an incredible actor, and I was very impressed. It was really wonderful. And I'm curious as well. You're Māori, and I'm wondering how that related to the script. Was that something that was originally in the script? Were you involved at all in the process of the Māori representation in the series?
I believe that Caz, before I landed the role, he wasn't Māori, right, Cole? That was sort of added in later on.
Yeah, it was open as far as what ethnicity Caz was, and with always the intention that whoever we ended up casting, it would end up affecting the story that was being told.
Yeah.
So Cole, how did you go about writing that? As someone who isn't Māori, how did you go about representing that accurately?
A lot of consultation. Yeah, having been in the position of, you know, being that consultant as well, I think kind of was helpful in knowing, you know, what we needed to ask for and what we needed to give to the people that we had as consultants. Our main person was Tweety Waititi, who's also a co-producer of Rūrangi. And yeah, I mean, it was always, the whole process of this has been very collaborative and consultative, with the idea of, I mean, one of the biggest conversations that I had early on in the piece with the kind of other main heads of department and things like that was around power dynamics and around how they could be unseen, and making sure that you're aware of them and how to break down them as much as possible. So one thing that was really important was about valuing the knowledge that each person brings, and not, yeah, and trying to break down some of that hierarchical structure that's just so intrinsic in filmmaking. And so knowing, you know, I think it's that thing about when you are working on something that isn't your own experience, is that knowing that you don't know and being okay with the fact that you don't know and being okay about asking for help and as much help as you need to do it right. That was, you know, always the deepest part of making this, was about making sure that we did this right in the, you know, the most intersectional feminist kind of way possible. So yeah, Tweety was amazing and was, you know, all across story ideas and, you know, making sure that, you know, Caz's story and also, you know, Anahita's story and Gerald's character, you know, and Ellie, you know, we've got so many amazing Māori characters in Rūrangi, and it was just, yeah. Like, while I say Caz was never written specifically for any ethnicity, it was always my dream that Caz, you know, was a person of color, because again, you know, that wasn't something that I was seeing as far as representation goes. And it was something that I was like, is really important to be seeing. So then when Elz came along and was just like this fucking phenomenal, you know, actor, was like, oh my God, this is perfect. This is just my dream. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great that you took that responsibility seriously. And Elz, I'm wondering what it was like being in such a collaborative environment. Were you used to that? What was it like being on set?
It was my first time on set, so I came in with no expectations at all. I just sort of winged it the whole time, the whole way through. Like,
That's impressive.
and I'm still like not comfortable with it. Like, I'm still like, I feel like such a newbie. I've got so much to learn, and probably a lot of it is like self-doubt, you know. The idea of season 2 like freaks me out. Just going off, you know, from other actors and their experiences on sets, it sounds like I got pretty lucky here. You know, with such a supportive crew and cast as well, and having Cole, and you know, because in all honesty, I come from a very different world where, you know, when I was younger, I grew up in a small community, so I really thought I was the only transgender person there, and I didn't even know if that was what it was called. It had no label. It was just, I knew who I was. I didn't have TV because we didn't have reception in the middle of the bush or the middle of, you know, the rural middle of the paddock. So I didn't watch much TV, and in all honesty, I didn't even realize that we were being misrepresented. I didn't even think it was an issue. Like, it just didn't even cross my mind, you know. So coming into first time on a set, and you know, Cole was like the first transgender person I'd met. You know, so it was just like, yeah, coming into this world of activism, and it's all really new for me. So yeah, it's been good for me. It's helped me open up my own mind, you know, as a transgender person. Keeps me open-minded, keeps me asking questions or having more conversations with people now, and I never thought I would be in that position, and it's so I'm learning, but it feels good. It feels really good. Yeah,
it's wonderful that it seems like there's been such an impact behind the camera and in front of the camera. And I really admire that. And I hope that there's more, I hope that filmmakers and producers, etc., like find inspiration from your project. because y'all took it very seriously and also found importance in the work behind the camera as well, which I find wonderful. And you mentioned season 2, like, will we be seeing more of Rūrangi?
Oh yeah, we're working on season 2 at the moment. We've been doing some recce's and looking at the locations, and yeah, it was really fun last week actually going, you know, back to Gerald's house and like back to Rūrangi Main Street and all of these locations, and just the story ideas that were kind of popping up. It was, yeah, incredible. And we've got I'm blown away by the writing team that we've got working on season 2. Yeah,
that's so exciting.
I wanted to say before about, like, you know, feeling like a total newbie. Like, I feel like a total newbie to Elz, and I think in some ways it's almost a little bit of a superpower to not know what is supposed to be the way things happen, because, you know, I went into it being like, well, I want to make films which are authentic in a compassionate way, that are also like really good, and people saying things like, oh no, you can't, you know, essentially like, you can't have all those things. You only get to choose like 1 or 2 of those things. You can't have them all. And I was like, well, you know, having had no experience and not knowing that was actually going to be really hard, was like, well, no, why not? Like, why can't we? And, you know, and then just the feedback that we've got has just been so incredible, you know, that we actually have managed to have all 3, that it's not an impossibility. You just have to keep holding that in the, you know, forefront of your mind as to what you want to achieve. And I think also it was always, our primary audience was always trans people, which I think is not the case often for a lot of trans stories. And again, because, you know, is it because they're made by cis people? Maybe. Is it because the idea is about like trying to help trans people rather than like give trans people the opportunities to make the changes ourselves? But yeah, you know, the scariest people of, you know, that we showed it to was the trans consultation panel for me. Like, I was like nearly having a panic attack before they were watching it, because I was like, you know, if they think it's bad, like, it's bad. You know, it doesn't matter whether the critics love it or whatever, you know, if my community is saying this doesn't represent us, or, you know, this hurts us. And so when they were like, we love it, you know, it feels really true, and it feels really empowering. It was like, yeah, it was the most important feedback that we got, I feel.
And I'm curious, could you elaborate a bit more? And maybe you already touched on this and don't have more to add to it, but how this happened? Because we hear so often that the reason that trans actors can't be cast as trans characters is just that there aren't enough. They just don't exist. Or there can't be trans writers because they're just not out there. I'm curious about the process, because you really prove that these are false claims. How did you find this team? Like, how did you source out all these amazing people?
We looked. I feel like, you know, at the most basic, sometimes that's it. It's like, you know, there's these claims like, oh, you know, well, there's no trans actors or whatever like that. There's no trans writers. It's like, how hard did you actually look? You know, how important was it to you that, you know, you kept looking and you know, and making the right connections and asking the right people? You know, like, if you're not of the community, then you're going to struggle to engage with and find people within the community. So you need to find, you know, the ways into that. You know, and also, I certainly can say this about myself, but I feel it's, you know, true in a larger sense, is this, like, trans people are skeptical about stuff like this. You know, we've been crapped on in the media so much, and have been, you know, toyed with about, you know, this is going to be the next great thing for, you know, trans representation, and then it's, you know, it's shit and it hurts us so often that, you know, we're cautious and hesitant about being involved with stuff. So it has to be this, like, really deep commitment, I think, to doing every step of things right. You know, like if you know that you need to cast, well, I mean, and that was one of the conditions, was it was like, if we don't find a Caz that's, you know, that a trans actor is going to play, then we're not going to make this. You know, not a case of like, well, we'll try quite hard, but then if we can't find anyone, we'll just cast a cis person. Like, you know, that was never an option. But yeah, it's not a case of just, you know, going, okay, we'll cast a trans person. You go, well, you know, right back at the beginning, what's our casting call look like? You know, have we done consultation around that? Because if you're putting out a casting call that uses really problematic language, then straight away you're gonna find that you're cutting yourself off from people who would go, well, you use that word in your casting call, so I'm, you know, gonna take a little bit of a leap here and say, hey, your whole project is probably not gonna, you know, treat me respectfully, or I'm not gonna be safe. What is the education level around gender identity of everyone on set? What is, you know, the consideration around things like wardrobe or intimacy scenes or makeup? You know, what kind of support is there on set for, you know, if there are scenes which are really close to home and, you know, or potentially traumatic. They're just, yeah, I mean, I could go on forever and ever about all those kind of things, you know, and then, you know, what is the promotional imagery? What is the, you know, what is our support system around, you know, engaging with media interviews and things like that? You know, how are we supporting our trans actors there? There's so many kind of levels to it that, you know, just saying, oh, cast a trans actor is like, is not enough.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I sincerely appreciated this convo. And where can folks go see Rūrangi?
It's streaming now exclusively on Hulu.
I know there is a huge time difference between us, but I really appreciate the effort you put into having this lovely conversation with us.